So the whole business model needs to be turned upside down. Today, which is dependent mostly on voice and contact center engagement, needs to move towards a self-service kind of a model. And if you look at the Gartner prediction, Gartner says in another 3 to 4 years, customers would manage 85% of their relationship with the enterprise without wanting to speak to an agent or a human being for that matter. So that is the shift that needs to be done. Now, are the organization not understanding that and making it their shift? I think they are, because self-service of today is not just about the objective of saving the cost, which used to be earlier. It is a requirement of the end customers. So if customers want to do a self-service, if it benefits the organization by cutting down the cost, why is the adoption not there? And there are certain examples, and these are the examples that I've taken from my own personal life. These are the messages that are sitting in my phone and my experience as a consumer, where while organizations have deployed multiple channels to engage with the customers, but it is not the way the customers are looking at. So let me quickly run through the examples here. So the first example that you see is from an airline where a offer is being given to me on a promotion for certain tickets that I buy. Now, what is my instinctive reaction? I want to reply to that message and understand what that offer is, or could I book a ticket? But it's only a one-way directional SMS. I don't have the ability to reply back. Now, if you look at certain other examples, the third slide here, there are certain organizations that would support a two-way SMS but expect me to sort of respond back in a certain text and a certain format and not supporting a conversational dialogue. So essentially the challenge here is, while there are multiple channels that the organizations are using for the customer benefit, it is being still run as a process as per the organization, not as per the expectation and the flexibility that the end customers are looking at. Because it is those moment of truths where you really want to respond the way the customer is wanting to engage, that is what would yield the result. So what do you do about that? I think the major thing to be focused here is, don't look self-service in isolation as just as technology. It got to be looked at what, from an aspect perspective, we refer to as a digital employee. We're not even calling it as an AI. So it is a new employee that comes into your organization that has a different skill set, but at the end of the day, they are integral part of your process and work just the way the human agents really work in. So where do you go and get and hire that kind of a digital employee? Ziggy is the name that we have given for the chatbot and the persona from an aspect perspective. And what is the advantage of really hiring a digital employee? Essentially, they will work 24/7, 365 days a year. They don't really want any holiday. I need a break every 3 months. The digital employees are not going to be wanting those kind of holidays. And from a skill set perspective, they can deliver a consistent information. They are trained on multiple languages. The accuracy levels are much more higher. So that is what you got to be looking at in terms of hiring a digital employee. That is the thought process, rather than looking in silos of implementing a self-service technologies. From an aspect perspective, we have a platform which is referred to as a CXP that helps in enabling this digital employee concept. So essentially, when you're looking at building any self-service solutions, the Aspect CXP platform helps you develop that solution, which could be developed on any of the platforms or any of the channels. So there are GUIs available to have a faster development. You don't really need to depend on any SIs to be able to develop that. The users can make the changes in those call flows on their own. Aspect provides our NLP, which is a natural language processing engine that supports multiple languages, including English and Hindi from an Indian context perspective, that can enable a conversational dialogue and still automate that. And the real differentiation here essentially is, it is a single platform. Once you develop that application, it could be ported for a chatbot on an SMS or a Facebook Messenger or a voice-based IVRS transaction, cutting down the efforts involved and the cost involved in deploying that across multiple channels. The other key element essentially is around workforce management. With the concept of digital employees coming in, the concept of workforce management becomes all the more important, because there is a different kind of an expectation now you have from your employees. So how do you monitor the quality? of not just your own employee, but the digital employee as well. And if with bulk of the task now being done by the digital employee, how do you really train those employees, the human employees, to improve their skill set for the new kind of functions that they need to be looking at? It says my time is up, but I'll just take a couple of more minutes to quickly run through those certain use cases and case studies. So from an organization to organization, it will really depend on what kind of a digital employee use cases that you deploy. There could be certain organizations that would want to automate all of that. There are certain organizations which would want to automate only the transactional part, and where the empathy is involved, you continue to go with a human agent. There are a couple of case studies I have, but I'll just run through one of them. This is an interesting project that we did for Mercedes, where we automated the entire car manual. Now, if you really look at every car or an automobile comes in with a manual, the more the costlier the car, the bulky the manual is going to be. But if you really need to look at those manual and pull out your information, it becomes a challenging task. So what we did with Mercedes is we really automated the entire manual and fitted that into a mobile. So now you could interact with the chatbot solution to be able to ask any question that you have, whether it is about where the jack in the car is or how do you pair your Bluetooth device with the car. There is an interesting project that we are doing with an airline in India, where the objective of the airline was essentially how do they have a direct sales happening rather than the sales happening through the agent, because that is what adds to the bottom line. So we automated a chatbot, a two-way conversational chatbot, where customers, rather than going to the website, they could just ask questions like what are the flight options, get a response back, and go ahead and select their tickets and do the complete transaction on that chat application. And whether in the last minute, in the real-time scenarios, if there are a cross-sell that needs to be done, whether it is an upgrade or a food menu that needs to be sold, all that can be taken care through that chatbot. The other thing is, how do you really increase the adoption of an automated interaction? Otherwise, people are used to pressing 9 and going to the agent. So some of the unique cases that we are deploying is while the customers are on the IVRs, and there are certain use cases where an address needs to be inputted, it is not possible to capture that input in an automated IVRs. So necessarily the call would go into the agent. But instead, while the IVRs transaction is happening, can an SMS or a Facebook Messenger be triggered to the end customer, where he can type in his address and respond back and then continue on the IVRs. So these are ways to increase the adoption of the self-service platforms. The other interesting case that we did with one of our leading bank, both in India and globally, which is a customer for Aspect, is to really automate their outbound calling process, whether it is for a telesales or a collection perspective. Now, typically when you do an outbound process, you sort of figure out what is the list that you need to be calling out. And then you start putting in various algorithms to reach out to the end customers. But what we did was, rather than the voice being the first mechanism to reach out to the end customer, we said, let us start by an automated interaction through a vanilla SMS. Giving a message to the customer if they can make a payment. If they can't make a payment, suggest a date that they can make a payment to. And if they can make a payment, we sort of send out a link where they can click on that link and complete the transaction. And the result that we found, that about 20% of the calling list got reduced just by following this process of sending out an SMS. So that brings in a lot of productivity. And more importantly, from an end customer perspective, it is not that he didn't intend to pay, but he was busy whenever a call was coming in, but he would have been more comfortable responding back to that SMS and closing that transaction. From an Aspect perspective, we really provide solutions across the spectrum, whether